everybody, and welcome to the professional development course, Let's Play Math. In this professional development learning session, we'll be talking about various materials as tools for authentic, deep learning of early math concepts. We will deepen our understanding of how we can see math all around us throughout the day. My name is Amanda, and I'm an early childhood educator facilitator with the Durham District School Board.
And I'm Diane, and I'm also an early childhood educator facilitator with DDSB.
So today we're going to start by talking about math in an inquiry stance, using math all day, and the different areas that we can use math in.
So our learning goals for this session will be that we're hoping that by the end of this session, you'll have a deeper understanding of how to use an inquiry stance when exploring math concepts and math skills, how to ask prompting questions during math exploration to really enhance the student's learning, and how to notice and name math throughout the day to embed more authentic experiences.
So we're first going to start off about talking about math in an inquiry stance. And we want to talk about how math has traditionally been a block of time that we've set out throughout the day. But in the Ontario kindergarten program, we want to move towards a math inquiry stance in our classrooms. And so what does that mean? The first thing we're going to do is listen. We're going to be open to what children are saying. We're going to actively listen to their interests and wonders to understand them. And we're going to use listening. We're going to listen to the learning that is taking place all around us. So we really want to make sure that you're listening to the children in the room. We're not just always talking to them. We want to listen to what they have to say.
We also really want to take the opportunity to notice a name. So when we're using our learning goals and success criteria, it really gives us a chance to anchor into what it is that we're looking for with learning for the children. Children really know what it is that is expected of them, and it helps us when we're entering into children's play with prompting questions. So when you get into the children's play and you're in notice and you're moving towards name, you may find that the children are able to name their own play. They may need you to do that for them. You know your kids best in your classroom. So if they're ready for the name of that, then go ahead and do that. Sometimes they're not ready for big words. Sometimes they are. That comes back to your own professional judgment.
Yeah. The next thing we want to do is we want to scaffold their learning. So you're going to connect what they're doing to the kindergarten program, and you're going to meet them where they are. We call this the zone of proximal development. And once you know where they are, we want to scaffold their learning and bring new learning to them.
And I think sometimes, Amanda, we overstep, right? And we think, oh, that child wasn't ready for that. And that's okay. We make mistakes, right? And so we just peel it back and figure out where they are and move forward from there.
So it's all about our inquiry stance is noticing where our children are in their learning in the classroom, what they're interested in, meeting them there, and then moving them forward in their learning from what we see.
Absolutely.
And hear, not just what we see.
And next, we're going to move into math all day. Research supports the understanding that mathematics experiences occur naturally in children's play. During play, children spontaneously measure, sort, classify, estimate, pattern, and so much more. However, it's known that with research that the presence of mathematics alone is insufficient for rich learning to occur. That is a call to us to bring intentional, purposeful interactions with the children to help maximize their play. Research also tells us that math is a great equalizer. Math is really what crosses gender boundaries, socioeconomic boundaries, and really gives children the opportunity to engage. And it is the best predictor of future success in academics. So we really want to be maximizing how we're bringing math learning to our children.
Yeah, and like we said previously, it's not going to just be a specific block of time that we're talking about math in our classroom. We want to bring it throughout the school day. So what does that mean? It means that we can start by asking some prompting questions in our classroom. We're not going to just assume that the learning is taking place. We want to go into the children's learning with some open minds and ask them these questions to get to what the learning that's taking place, not just assuming that what they're doing there. We want to ask them those questions. Or you could just come into their play. You don't have to say anything. Maybe you just want to see what they're doing, and you just go and you sit by them and you listen to what they have to say.
I like that one. That was given to me one time, a lady who works for the ministry here in Ontario, and she said to me, it's really neat to go in and just say nothing. And as a person who's naturally a talker, I didn't really approach my kids with a whole lot of hey, what are you doing? Without saying that. And so it was really interesting to go in and just sit down and see who will talk and who will tell you what they're thinking, and to not presume just because it looks like patterning activity that's actually what the child is doing. So yeah, that's really important.
And I love listening to the students, especially when they were talking amongst themselves. I didn't have to insert myself into that conversation. I could just listen to what they were saying to each other, because sometimes they're just having these great conversations, and you can find out so much about what they're doing just by listening to what they have to say. So if you're going into children's play, we have some ideas for some prompting questions you could ask. You could ask them, how do you know? So if they are doing a pattern and they say, oh, I'm making a pattern, well, how do you know that's a pattern? So you can start from there. You could even ask, what do you notice? Maybe they're looking at different items in the classroom. They're doing different patterning activities. You can ask them, what do you notice? How did you find that out? So if they're doing some kind of inquiry, if they're looking at different math concepts, whatever it is that they're doing in the classroom, you could just ask them, how did you find that out? Or how are you using this is a great one for entering play, I feel like. How are you using the blocks? How are you using, I don't know, the sensory bin? Whatever it is that they're doing, you could just ask them, how are you using them?
I love that. And I think that also with how do you know, one that we didn't include here that's a very powerful question is there another way you can show me that? So that really expands the way they're thinking critically about their own work and recognizing that one way isn't the only way to do something.
So those are just some examples of
absolutely
so many more prompting questions you can ask, and just being open and asking questions as you enter the play, not just telling them what you think they are doing, is really powerful to get the learning from the students themselves.
This part here is about, can you find the math? So as we're thinking about the classroom and our day as filled with math, I said to you the other day, Amanda, like, how much math did you actually use to get here to work this morning? From when you wake up in the morning, and how much or how little, or how long can I stay in the shower, and estimating time, and quantity of how many coffees, for example, those kind of things, and so we know that math happens naturally. And so until we explicitly name those skills as math, children often don't correlate that, so that when they get into higher grades and math starts to get a little more complicated, they don't view themselves as math learners. So research shows that when children have a really thorough understanding of the math that they're actually manipulating all day long, that they are better prepared. So that is then a call back to us to, are we naming it when we notice it? So let's have some examples.
So these are examples throughout the school day. Again, these are not going to be examples for when you're actually sitting down and doing math. These are for throughout the day. So we're going to show you some pictures. We're going to give you an example of when you could see math throughout the day. You can pause the video and try to think of all the different ways you can embed math in there, but we'll give you a little moment to think about what math you see before we dive more into that piece. So the first one here is during transitions, like lineups. What kind of math do you see in lineups? We line up all throughout the day. We line up to go to the gym. We line up to go outside. We line up to go to our bus. What kind of math can we embed during that time? That happens frequently throughout the day.
So I think that, it lends itself to, oh, you're first in line, you're second, you're last. And just that reminder of, wow, those are math words that we're using. And, oh, we used first and in this context, and as we're talking about ordinal numbers, it's finding those opportunities. Obviously counting how many people in line, specifically saying I'm using my one-to-one correspondence as I'm counting you. It lends itself to addition and subtraction. And explaining to children how this gives me data and how I manage my data. We can pattern, boy, girl, outfit, short hair, long hair, all kinds of things. That it really begins to talk about the fact that numbers have a purpose, and really just starting to one more, one less, all of those kind of things that add along.
And using that math language when we're talking to our students too. So our line is 11 children long. So instead of just saying, oh, we have 11 kids, our line is 11 children long, gives them a few more math words that they can embed throughout the day, and they hear us using them. They become more familiar words to them.
And I think it gives realness to the numbers, and helps them to be able to then be able to predict and estimate, right? How many kids would you say, can you walk across the room that we're in here to the window? How many steps do you think? Oh, that'll take 100 steps. Because they don't have, they're just blurting numbers, and they don't really have a good, solid understanding of what those mean. So these are those opportunities to just, this is what we're working on right now. And gosh, I thought we were just going home, but turns out that we're using our math skills today and right now.
And we're using those math language words in different contexts. So they're not only being used during math centers as a math word, they're being used throughout the day in our language, and making sure that the students hear it across all different contexts too makes those words more meaningful to them.
And we know from our conversation in our podcast with Nancy, our speech language pathologist, she talks a lot about those words across context and really helps to develop a whole rich meaning of what that means. We'll put the podcast in notes.
Yeah, we'll put that in the description so that you can go listen to that if you'd like. So another one that happens throughout the day, it's during our snack times or lunchtime, any kind of eating time. What kind of math can you embed while students are eating?
I love this as an example while they're thinking, because I love those opportunities that just lend themselves organically, where the children don't even necessarily know they're learning.
Mm-hmm. And it's just, they're comfortable, it's something that they do every day. So embedding math in there, it feels natural when you start embedding math into it.
I think particularly for those reluctant learners or the reluctant speakers, if they're comfortable in their eating, and it's a good entry.
Yeah. So here's some of the math that we thought of that you could see during some eating times. So you could be counting, using subitizing skills, patterning, sorting the different snacks, comparing them. Again, using all that math vocabulary, talking about having one more, one less, having the same, any kind of quantity language is great. Using the bigger, smaller, heavier, lighter words, full and empty. Making comparisons if you have 8 children and we have 8 chairs, making those connections. Also the 2D, 3D shapes. I know that every time we start talking about 2D and 3D shapes, the kids come and show me all their crackers or all the different, grapes and what shape is a grape, and talking about 2D and 3D shapes in that real context of real world items. And then like addition strategies. I ate 2. If I eat 1 more, that will be 3. 3 of us have apples and 1 of us has grapes. And just again, embedding that math into those natural conversations that you're having with the students anyways while they're eating.
I love that you said the real world context, Amanda, because we know that math gets very abstract, and we think of our own schooling experience, and we've all had that opportunity where you're thinking, why am I actually learning this? And so to be able to make it real for them is something they would want to actually understand. And that's why having learning goals success criteria helps to set that up. It gives them an understanding of, well, this is purpose. And this is something that I really would want to know. And then if we can find these ways that are naturally occurring around us throughout the day to leverage, to add in these skills, what a fantastic way to get that to them.
I know, especially if we're doing 2D and 3D shapes and we're just showing them pictures of it, it doesn't feel as real as when they're holding that 3D shape or that 2D shape in their hand. That makes it more real for them. That makes that concept come alive. And so eating time again, or any kind of transition, any time throughout the day is a great time to highlight that math that is happening.
Love that.
So another area that we do spend a lot of time with, especially in Canada when snow pants start to come on and off and all that nice time in the Cubby area when they're getting ready. So either they're getting ready to come into the classroom or getting ready to leave the classroom, changing shoes, packing backpacks, all that transition time around the Cubby area. What kind of math do you see taking place there?
So I would say, besides the fact that it's crowded in here, and so that really starts to give us size and abstraction, that part of the room is smaller and those kind of things, but it's still one part of the room and we have one bigger part of the room. And anyhow, it's we can be sorting clothes and sorting backpacks, and these are bigger and smaller and longer and shorter, and noticing patterns and talking about sames and difference and quantity and subitizing, and spatial reasoning is huge in the Cubby Area. And it occurs to me that I wonder how many people actually ask the children if they have ideas about how the Cubby Area could be different. It's really them that are shoulder to shoulder with their friends. So it would be an interesting way to really get them thinking about math and how it might be worked out better from their, shorter perspective on the space.
Yeah. And it's just a great place to embed math because your children aren't going to be thinking about math when they're in the Cubby Area. But if you just start to naturally embed it in there, it's just something that they're just going to start thinking about naturally throughout the day. So I feel like the Cubby Area lends itself a lot to a lot of great math talk without it being direct instruction time. It's just, you're just talking about math, and it just happens to be in the Cubby Area.
Yeah.
So it's just a great place to embed a lot of math learning.
I think it puts us out of the time frame, or the mindset rather, that you're learning now because we're learning. Where if we shift into the idea that children are always learning, they are always seeking information, they're always watching and listening. And so if we can think of 4 and 5-year-olds in that context, then we really see all moments as unique opportunities for natural learning. So we wanted to talk about areas of the classroom where the math lives, but we don't think of as like a naturally a math center type of thing, for example. And so really, as we're thinking of spreading math across our day, I know that I've had a lot of people say to me, how do I get this authentic math that you want me to be noticing and naming throughout the day? So we really thought if we, break open some of the materials that you could be maybe adding in, and then that brings us back to noticing and naming and seeing, listening, like you started with at the beginning of this, and seeing what the children come up with.
Yeah. So the first area we're going to look at is our sensory bins. So how can you embed some math learning into your sensory bin? So we can do some counting, some patterning, some sorting. We can use so much math language. We can talk about capacity, measurement, and ordering, all with just the items that you're placing in a sensory bin. And I know that's always a popular center in a kindergarten classroom. Students are always excited to go see what's been added or changed up in the sensory bin. And just adding a few of these components, adding a few of this language into your sensory bin is a great opportunity for some math learning that can take place in there.
And I think to set it up with the invitation of boys and girls that really want to see what kind of math is going to happen here today, and see what they come up with. And it may take a little bit of prompting, or it may just organically emerge right out of there, and things that we didn't even necessarily think of the children are talking about.
And just some great noticing and naming moments can be taking place too, because when you go over to the sensory bin, you might see math that the students there themselves don't see, but you're able to notice and name some of the math learning that's happening there. Yeah. So again, thinking of another popular center in a kindergarten classroom, the block center. Think about what kind of math can you embed in your block center. It's a perfect opportunity to embed so much learning into it because it's so hands-on. So can you add some measurements, some comparing, patterning, counting, some spatial reasoning or math language into that space to make it just such great math learning that's happening naturally within it. So,
and I think blocks are so fun because it lends itself to just real exploration by children, where they're lifting things and turning things and trying to manipulate them, and they don't necessarily even have the language yet for what it is they're thinking. Maybe their hands are too little to lift a block, or maybe this one's lighter than that one. And so it's not until we really get them in there and get them hands into it that they really have those opportunities to see that happening around them. I love the photograph in this picture as well, because this was a center that they were able to, throughout the course of the year, this did not happen in September, really get to that the children were able to return to their learning, and that they were able to build on other people's learning. It took a lot of co-construction with the children, and I know that it was something that we were working on in our classroom that wasn't always successful. So it was really neat to see how that rolled out, and so know that these things are possible depending on your group of kids.
Yeah. Another area that I know I love to use in our classroom is our tech tools. So how can we use technology for math learning? In this picture, I'm using the app ChatterPix, which is fantastic for getting students to use their math thinking and talk to the device and tell us what they're thinking without even an adult interference. It's all about them. So we can do some coding. We can use different apps to showcase math thinking. Like I said, Chatterpix or Draw and Tell is another great app. You can even do picture walks. So we used to go around the school if we were learning about 2D or 3D shapes, and we'd say, how many pictures can we find of these 3D shapes? We would go around and notice all the 3D shapes in the real world around us and take pictures of them, and then we could come back and put them into a digital book, or I could print them and students could write out which 3D shapes that they saw and put it all together in a book. You can do this for anything. You can do it for patterning, for numbers, for 2D shapes, anything that your students are interested in. You can go out and just do a picture walk with them.
I noticed in this picture that you have here, Amanda, as well, is that you were using the mathology books that we got across our DDSB system last year. And so in that example with Chatterpix, were the children retelling the book through using Chatterpix?
So in the castle wall, they're talking about using 3D shapes to build the wall, and if they slide or roll and all that kind of the properties of 3D shapes. And so students were able to build their own wall. And then they took a picture of it using Chatterpix and talked about the 3D shapes that they used to build their wall and their properties. So the sphere was rolling, or the cylinder could slide and roll. So talking about the different properties of the 3D shapes while embedding the tech tool in it. And I didn't have to sit there and document all the learning that was happening because they were doing it themselves. They were documenting their own learning. So that was fantastic.
What a great way to get the innovation into the classroom and, leveraging the tools that we're given. Yeah, awesome. So our Dramatic Play Center is sometimes an overlooked area for these kind of things. And it's not just an imaginative play center. We can really think about adding numbers to it and maybe our loose parts, really inviting the children to take pieces across the room into the Dramatic Play Center that will support that. And money can be in there depending upon the kind of things that we're creating. So, have we thought about adding graphs or 10 frames if we've got a bakery, for example, and for those kind of things? The math tools can be added in there and see what happens when we give them to the children. Really, a muffin tin lends itself to some natural sorting in that way, right? So if you have 6 or you have 12 ice cube trays as well, they are really set up to that kind of learning as well.
Even adding a simple balance into the Dramatic Play Center can add so much math with weight and comparisons and all that. But for some reason, I just never thought of bringing a balance into the Dramatic Play area, and how much more math can just be embedded from that simple math tool, just switching spaces in the classroom.
So, Amanda, I know that French is your first language and English is your second language. So when you say bringing in a balance, do you mean a scale, what I would call a scale?
Yes, a balance. Yes. One of those. Yeah, so we would just bring them across. Right? So thinking about the different materials that you have in your classroom already and just moving them to a new space can even just be a powerful way to embed math in different spaces.
Love that. So, and are we taking it outside? Kindergarten program invites us to explore learning in all places, in our classroom, in an outdoor classroom, and beyond the walls of our fences. And so, are we using natural materials that we have outside? Are we inviting the children to bring things in? Are we picking up leaves at this time of year and sorting them and talking about the different things that we're seeing with them? And are we taking clipboards outside? Are we taking pieces from within our classroom to outside of our classroom because it will extend that same learning that we were just working on? For example, the mathology book, and maybe big blocks could have been taken outside, and the children could have continued that learning that they have been working on. So sometimes it's just thinking about how we can extend our reach to a larger space.
Just making our students or children see that math can happen everywhere. Again, this is just about making math happen everywhere for our students. Yeah, and so where else can you embed math throughout the day? Think of your classroom. So can you bring some more math to your carpet, to the sink? I know that I used to do this in my classroom too. And in this picture, you can see how you can just use your sink as a water table. You don't need an extra sensory bin to be a water table. You can just fill up your sink with some water And it just is great because I know that the water used to get really gross in our sensory bin. So this was a fantastic way that you can just pull the plug, empty it, and whenever it was too dirty, you could just add new water to it in a really easy way without having to transport that big sensory bin across the room. So do you have a light table that you can add some math elements to it? Do you have some small world play? Or even at the art easel, what can you put in your art easel to encourage some math learning to happen there?
The bottom photograph, I wouldn't want people to think that this was a classroom that had loads and loads of shelves, because it wasn't. It was taken in a classroom where they had really deliberately scaled back on the amount of stuff that was available in the classroom for the children throughout the day, because the children had access to what was out. So instead of having all of the puzzles out, for example, they had a few. So what happened was it lent itself to spaces being open. So this created, with some mats on the floor, individual spaces to work. So it's just thinking differently about the walls that we're bound with, right? We get assigned a classroom, and this is what we have to work with. So how can we think differently about it?
Rethink our spaces.
Rethink.
Yeah. So now we're just going to have a little reflection. You pulled this quote. I think this is in the kindergarten program. And it says, young children engage in significant mathematical thinking and reasoning in their play. Combine free play with intentional teaching and promoting play with mathematical objects and mathematical ideas is pedagogically powerful. I almost got through that whole quote. So we want to make sure that our children in our classroom have time to play and freely play, but we also want to make sure that we're still teaching them.
Absolutely.
Throughout the day and embedding that rich math learning that we know is happening. We just want to make sure that we're noticing and naming that learning, we're scaffolding that learning, and we're really making sure that the children see themselves as math learners.
Absolutely. Free play doesn't just mean free for all. It means, really opportunity for exploration. It might be, I would have centers that were sort of free play, if you will, amongst our more structured centers, because we were sort of wondering what the children were going to do with those materials, or what might come out of it, how they saw it. So free play doesn't have to have an organized time, for example. It can, but it is a call to us to still be listening, like you spoke to at the beginning, and really taking those times and having the children share with each other and notice and name their own math learning, and really to be able to build on that.
So we want to thank you for coming and listening to our PD today. So we want to make sure that you're embedding math throughout the day, and it's an important way to improve math fluency in our youngest learners. And so we want to leave you with this question: where else can you incorporate math during the school day? So what is one new thing that you want to bring into your practice, and maybe something that you're going to leave behind? And just, we want to leave you with that reflection for yourself.
Yeah, it's really not a call to change up everything, no, right? It is, how can you lean into this? How can you notice a name where maybe you missed it before yourself? And if we're missing it for ourselves, then the children, we're not certain that the children are seeing it and naming it then too. Yeah.
So we are having lots of new PDs coming for you from the DDSB Earliers. So make sure you're following us on Twitter and Instagram. Our handle on both is at DDSB Earliers. We'll make sure we let you know of any upcoming PDs that you can take either online or in person. And so, yeah, make sure you're following us there. We'll make sure there's the links down below so that you can follow us all through there. Super. Thank you.
Thanks.